guys get back-to-back share-up. Woo! My congratulations or my apologies, whichever way. How many people would agree that Solomon would have benefited by the name and number of a good counselor?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Takes one to know one, though. You know what I'm saying? Takes one to know one. All right, so we don't even really have so many questions for Solomon when I get to heaven. You know, we don't know exactly where his process was. We don't know if he ate some bad olives. We don't know, but he was on this trek to figure out the meaning of life. So Jenny did a great job of our intro in our chapter 1. I thought I had to leave early, but I went back and listened, and I thought it was great. You could actually just go listen to that again, and you're gonna get a lot of the same info, but we're gonna plot forward. So last week we looked at Solomon was trying to figure out if wisdom was the meaning of life. Okay, and he decided, nope, it was not the meaning of life. So we're moving on. All right, so we're gonna read the first 3 verses of chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes. All right, so the little subheading I have in my Bible here says the futility of pleasure. So that's foreshadowing, in case you guys don't know. Okay, he's already telling you it's futile. So it says, I said to myself, come on, let's try pleasure. Let's look for the good things in life. But I found that this too was meaningless. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. And this is okay. And while still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. In this way, I tried to experience the only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. So for Solomon to be the wisest king, he did some really foolish things, right? We heard about one right there. But I want to take just a second and talk to you about, in these first 3 verses, we already look at the word meaningless, right? Now, some of your versions may say a synonym, futile, unimportant, all of these things. So in the Hebrew, the word for that is hebel. Everybody say that. Hebel. Sometimes you see it with a B, sometimes you see it with a V. Talk amongst yourselves, I don't know. But this hebel is actually, it's a picture. Everybody take a deep breath. Now blow it out. Okay, now if we were outside and it was really cold, when we would blow that out, you would see a little bit of smoke, right? And how long does that last? 1 or 2 seconds, right? So that's the picture of hebel. Basically, it means 2 different things, okay? First of all, it is the waste product of breathing, okay? It's the waste product. It's waste. And then also, it's the opposite of when we see in the Bible that God talks about the breath of life, right? When God breathes life into Adam, or the breath of life. It's the opposite of that, okay? So it's not something that everybody is going to be really excited about, or even notice or think about, right? So it actually has 2 different types of meanings. So I want to talk to you about that really quickly before we get into the chapter, because I want you to be able to think about this while it's going on, okay? So the first thing is it's used metaphorically to describe these words, okay? Futile, meaningless, false, okay? And it's used, I think, 38 times in the book of Ecclesiastes, which if you've gone very far, you know that's true, okay? But it can also mean transitory, insubstantial, fleeting, or impermanent. Okay? So it's gonna talk about the meaning of life, but it's also can talk about how short life is. Okay? So those are the 2 ways that's gonna be used. All right? So don't forget that as we go forward. All right, so Solomon goes off on this pleasure thing, okay, trying to figure it out. Again, for the wisest man in the world, I don't know. I have no words for some of this. But so he lists alcohol, and then he lists laughter as pleasure. Now, I am going to put foolishness in parentheses after laughter, because I personally like to laugh. Yes. And I don't think that it is futile or meaningless, okay? So I'm going to go with foolishness. But you know what? The deal is we could list some more things, couldn't we? in our own lives that we consider pleasurable, but that we shouldn't build our lives on? These are some of the ones I came up with. Relationships. It could be your husband, it could be your best friend, it could be your kids, it could be your parents. Okay? Food. Right? Spending money, shopping like we're going to do next month. Okay? Gossip, being in the know. I want to know what's going on. Even ministry. Right? Even ministry. Now, I left the blank there because you in your mind are probably thinking of something that you struggle with. There are lots of pleasurable things in life. And that's not a bad thing. The problem comes in when we build our life on pleasure. When we spend so much time on pleasure that it becomes more important than anything else, right? And see, here's the secret. We women, we're smart enough to know that. Solomon, I don't know. I don't know where he was going with all this. And the problem with pleasure, I think you'll agree, is that it's addictive. You know what I mean? Let's take alcohol for a second, okay? So on a Friday night, somebody goes out and gets drunk, right? Wakes up the next morning, feels terrible, horrible, has a bad day, but then what he's trying to figure out, well, I guess I need to just drink a little bit more tonight because the buzz didn't last long enough for me to really feel better in the long run, so I need to go drink some more. You know what I'm saying? Same thing for shopping. You spend a day shopping. You get home, you look at all your purchases, and what are you thinking about? You're thinking about that one shirt that you did not buy. Right? You bought all this stuff, but I need that other shirt. So what are you going to do tomorrow? You're going to go buy that shirt. It's addictive. It's addictive. It just keeps us in this vicious cycle, right?
Plants too.
Plants, okay. Nelda said plants. Now, it's super easy for me not to go with that. But like shoes and other things, that's my downfall. Whatever it is, right? Whatever it is that brings you pleasure, if we put that above everything else in our life, are we going to have a life that is meaningful? I say no. I say no. Because here's the thing. Worldly pleasure doesn't last. Worldly, it doesn't last. In Proverbs 21:17, it says, whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. Now, you might say, oh, that means he's not going to make a lot of money. Maybe, but I think it's talking about rich in other ways, right? You won't have richness in your heart. You won't have richness in your family. You won't have richness in your relationship with the Lord, right? Because we put this above it, okay? 1 Timothy 5:6 says, the widow, or I'm going to put woman in there for our purposes, who lives only for pleasure is spiritually dead even while she lives. I don't like that. I don't want to be walking around here spiritually dead, right? So pleasure is never, ever going to satisfy us. Now, is God against pleasure? No, he is not. He wants us to have pleasure in life, but he wants our pleasure to be built on what? Him, right? When God looks at our lives and he sees us enjoying our family, when he sees us enjoying our friends, when he sees us growing in our relationship with Christ, when he sees us reaching out like with Kairos or the Hope Clinic, whatever ministry you want to list, or even just your personal ministry to other people, that brings him great joy. He wants you to enjoy life. But he does not want you to build your life on pleasure, which means you're seeking it above all else. Like, I can't go lunch with you today, Robert, because I got to go shop. Right? Yeah. He doesn't want us to build our lives on pleasure, and we're going to find out why in just a little bit. So this is a really good scripture that I found that to me, this is one of the themes of the first part of this chapter, but it's Psalm 16:11. You may already know it. It's fairly familiar. You make known to me the path of life. In you, talking to God here, in your presence, there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures evermore. So a little sidebar. If you are a person that feels like you are not having any kind of pleasure, get at God's right hand. Right? Go to God. Go to God. Put your eggs in God's basket. okay? Because that's where our true joy comes from, ladies. Life is crazy here on this earth, and we will never be satisfied with just pleasure. We just won't be. And you know, Satan wants to trick you into thinking that you can be, right? But don't fall for it, because it is absolutely false. And so, you know, as we see these sections of Ecclesiastes, we see Solomon over and over saying, it's like chasing the wind. It's like chasing the wind. Building your life on worldly pleasure will leave you, now tell me if this is right, frustrated, discouraged, depressed, and confused. And I have been all of those things sometimes in the same minute. Right? But that's true when you think about it. When you've got excess going on in your life, deep in your heart, you're not happy. You don't have joy. Because we have to find our pleasure in things of God. Because that is the only pleasure that's really going to satisfy. All right, so let's go on. We're going to start in verse 4 and read through 11. I also tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and by planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens and parks, filling them with all kinds of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect the water to irrigate my many flourishing groves. I bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into my household. I also owned large herds and flocks, more than any of the kings who had lived in Jerusalem before me. I collected great sums of silver and gold, the treasure of many kings and provinces. I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and had many beautiful concubines, everything a man could desire. So I became greater than all who had lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all my labors. But as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all so meaningless, like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. So he's moved on from pleasure. Now he's going to talk about accomplishments. He's going to talk about work. Okay? Now, I just had to laugh here for a second because he talks about how he had all these, beautiful concubines, and if you missed the footnote, there were 700 wives and 300 concubines. And then he says, so I became greater than all who had lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom never failed me. My husband laughed out loud at that. My husband's like, who in their right mind wants more than one woman? I can barely handle you. And I tried really hard to find like a compliment in there. Couldn't really find it. But, it's interesting because he's supposed to be so wise, right? Okay, so he is, the wisest, supposedly the wisest king, the most prosperous king, not only of his day, but I think he stands the test of time, right, for today. That's what the Bible tells us in our research that we have done. So he had a lot of money, okay? Now he got this money from trades that he made in precious metals, and y'all, wait for it.
We're still waiting.
Just give it a second. Boom! I have a slide! Ain't none of you visual learners going to tell me nothing today. So this green area right here is where it's called the Fertile Crescent, and this was Solomon's kingdom at the time. We know that it was the southern border of Egypt, okay, and then it's like east and north of Israel. So this was his domain where he reigned during this time. Now there's one more picture of what it looks like today. I thought was really beautiful. Look at that. Yeah, right. So it was fertile. Its name is telling the truth about it. So he was able to mine a lot of precious metals, and he traded a lot with other kingdoms so that he could gain this wealth, right? He got this admiration of all these other world leaders, and they would bring him gifts that were very valuable and priceless. And then, of course, he had taxes. They didn't have taxes back then. So he had plenty of money, okay? So with all of this money, he decides, I'm going to find some meaningful life in building and accomplishment. So he set out, right? So he built everything from like little porches on the backs or the front of your home to big old beautiful gates to entire cities. And then, of course, we know his big build was the temple, right? So he did a lot of building. He did a lot of hard work. So he also had vineyards. If you look at Song of Solomon 8, verses 11 and 12, you can read about his vineyards. He had gardens, he had massive herds of cattle, and then all he really needed, though, was a bunch of people to work for him. Like we were laughing this morning, he didn't lay a brick, y'all. Come on, he didn't lay any bricks. But he needed a bunch of people to go feed the cows and to go make the bricks and to go, do whatever it was he needed them to do. So he was really into it for a while, okay? In fact, it says in the verse that we just read, he had everything a man could want. He could go out of his, palace and look at all of these beautiful, all the gardens and the reservoir for the gardens and all the beautiful, he could just go right out there and look at it, okay? But here's the deal. It was fairly fulfilling for a little bit, all of his hard work. But then, in the end, what does he think? It's meaningless. It's hebel, right? So hard work in the Hebrew is avodah shah, okay? So he did a lot of that, but it still did not bring him the meaningful part of life. He still was not fulfilled. He was not satisfied. Why? Because all that he built, all of his money, it was all temporal. Like you can't really go to this Fertile Crescent today and see very much of what Solomon built.
Right.
I think I saw there was part of the wall of the temple left and like a couple of little structures, of some other buildings, whatever, but that's it. Why? Because earthly things are not going to stand the test of time.
Right.
They're not. They're not going to stand the test of time. If you put all of your treasure and your energy and your time into temporal things, you're going to be disappointed. It's going to feel empty, right? And so Jesus makes it clear here, Matthew 6, 19 through 21. What does it say? We probably have read this 100 times. Don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, what's also going to be there?
Your heart.
Your heart and the desires of your heart. So we want our hearts to be eternal, right? We want the things in our hearts to be eternal. Every single thing that you can name right now that is temporal on this earth, it's not going to change your heart for a positive way.
Right.
So I wonder what it is. What is it? Is God against hard work and wealth? Nope. He's not. He tells us all through Proverbs, especially, you need to get some work done. You need to plan. You need to take care of your family. Okay, so that's biblical. That's a command from God the Father, right? Paul tells us in Galatians, every man's got to carry his own load. Okay, you can't be a freeloader. You can't go like, I'm going with you to lunch because you'll pay. I know you pay every time. You can't do that. You got to pay your own way. You got to take care of yourself and your family. So we're not saying here that we should not work hard, right? But what we're saying here is you can't be obsessive about it, right? So in my life, I have a really good example of this. My husband is, by the end of this year, going to be basically retired. And it's a big deal for him, okay? For those of you that don't know, my husband is a CPA and a financial planner, and he actually built the financial services of Edgar Kuyker and Cross from the ground up. Okay, so he has worked in this building, of this firm since before we were married. Okay, and he works hard, and he's very good at what he does. And so he's at this place in his life where it's kind of daunting, honestly. It's kind of like, okay, I built this, and now I'm stepping away, and what am I supposed to do now? Right? Because in a lot of ways, his identity has just kind of been wrapped up in that. Right? And, to be honest, he missed some baseball games when his kids were little. He missed some, dance recitals because he worked a lot. And so now he's asking himself, was it worth it? What do I have to really show for it? I mean, he's made some money, of course. He's helped some people with their finances, great. But at this point in my life, almost 70 years old, what do I have to show for what I spent the majority of my time doing? Now, luckily, God has blessed us, and the reason, in our opinion, is for God to bless you financially is so that you can bless other people. And he's very generous. And so that's good. That's good. But when you look at something, you have to weigh it, right? Are the things that I gave up less important for all the hours that I worked? He's trying to figure that out. He's trying to figure that out. So, poor Solomon, he's not looking in the right place, and he's getting more and more discouraged. He's not getting better. He's not feeling better. He's feeling worse and worse. We've still got that Hevel thing going, okay? So, let's read 12 through 23. So, I decided to compare wisdom and foolishness and madness. For who can do this better than I, the king? Well, yeah, he would know about madness. I'm pretty sure. I thought wisdom is better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise can see where they're going, but fools walk in the dark. Yet, I saw that the wise and the foolish share the same fate. Both will die. So I said to myself, since I will end up the same as the fool, what's the value in all my wisdom? This is all so meaningless. For the wise and the foolish both die. The wise will not be remembered any longer than the fool. In the days to come, both will be forgotten. So I came to hate life, because everything done here under the sun is so troubling. Everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind. I came to hate all my hard work here on earth, for I must leave to others everything I have earned. And who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? Yet they will control everything I have gained by my skill and hard work under the sun. How meaningless! So I gave up in despair, questioning the value of all my hard work in this world. Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill. They must have the fruit of their efforts, leave the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless, a great tragedy. So what do people get in this life for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even their minds at night cannot rest. It is all meaningless. So Solomon's watching some hee-haw. Y'all remember hee-haw? Gloom, despair, and agony on me. Right? Okay, there. So he's singing that song, right? He cannot figure it out. He's like, what in this world why have I done all this? Why have I done all this hard work? Why have I created all these buildings? Because my ding-dong child, Rehoboam, go look him up if you didn't have a chance to, is going to blow it all. My thought is, he knew Rehoboam. He's like, I see you. I know what you're going to do with all this when I'm gone. Right? The Bible tells us he was a foolish king. He did not rule like his father. He didn't listen to any of the advisors that advised Solomon, and he messed everything up. Okay? And it's kind of like with Robert. He's having to lead the financial services department to people that he don't feel like knows what they're doing yet. Right? You know what I'm saying? He's like, what's going to happen in 2 years after I'm gone? Like, is all the bricks going to be down and the name fell off the door? I mean, what's going to happen? Right? So this is kind of where Solomon is. So these are his worries. both the wise man and the foolish man's lives are fleeting. Remember that Hebel again? Breathe out. That fast, right? Both the wise man and the foolish man share the same fate, physical death. Both the wise man and the foolish man are going to ultimately be forgotten along with all of their hard work and accomplishments. And you know, quite honestly, I mean, look at what we think about Solomon. Do we think about him building the temple? Do we think, no, we think about the dang 700 wives and the 300 concubines that he had, right? I mean, like, I sure don't want to be known for anything crazy like that, but that's what we remember about Solomon. Maybe a few more things, right? So he's like, why in the world do I want to leave all that I've accomplished to people who have not helped me build it? And that's what he was looking at having to do. They have no skin in this game. They're just going to pick up the reins and they're going to keep trotting on. Why do I want to leave all that I have done in this kingdom to dadgum Rehoboam? What's my other boys, you know, what is he like? Let's skip over Rehoboam because he's going to mess everything up, right? So what does what does he say? All of our hard work gets us anxiety, pain, and grief. And he's in despair and he hates life. I mean, this is serious. This dude needs some counseling, right? So basically he's saying if death is the end of this life and there is nothing beyond this life, we have been robbed. And you know what? Here's the deal. I get it. I can understand why he feels that way. But thank God for the end of this chapter. Am I right?
Yes.
Thank God for the end of this. So, let me see if I can find it here. We're going to pick up real quickly in 24. So I decided there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that those pleasures are from the hand of God. For who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please him. But if the sinner becomes wealthy, God takes the wealth away and gives it to those who please him. This, too, is meaningless, like chasing the wind. I'm like, no, don't go back there, Solomon. You're doing so well.
Yes.
Right? So, here's the thing. I'm sure that when you did your study this week, you figured this out, right? We cannot build our lives if we want them to be meaningful on anything on this earth.
Right.
We have to have an eternal perspective. That is where we build our lives. We build our lives on the things of God. We build our lives on the things that are going to last and stand the test of time. And so, some of you heard my, testimony last week, and I just want to be really real with you for a second. I have had a lot of days where I have felt like my life was meaningless lately. My life is very unrecognizable in a lot of ways right now. I'm missing, my father, my mom struggling mentally. I've got all these health things, and I'm just like, God, what is my life about? So Sunday, I woke up and it was off to a bad start because my colostomy bag had come off, and if you're not sure why that's bad, see me after class, I can explain it to you. And that is just terrible, okay? It's just terrible. Nobody wants to wake up that way, trust me. But I got it together, got up, did all the things I needed to do, got to church, and I was just sad, depressed, some of these things that we're just talking about right here, right? So we get into the worship service, and they start this song called Been So Good, and I just started to cry because I was like, God, I know you have done good things for me, but right now all I can think about is that mess I just left at home, and all of the things that are so just like right in my line of vision. I need you to remind me. And he did. And of all the things he reminded me that he's done for me, not one of them included a pair of new shoes. Not one of them included going to the movies or my years of teaching and how many IEPs I filled out and all these things. You know what? It was all eternal stuff. All of it. And he's like, here's the thing, Cheryl, when you get your eyes off of me and on what's happening around you, yeah, it's going to seem very meaningless, but you are an eternal being. And one day, it's not going to matter because you're not going to have a colostomy anymore.
That's right.
You're not going to have diabetes anymore. And see, these are the things that make our lives meaningful, ladies. But all of it is eternal. It's all eternal. So I wanted to end with this song that we did Sunday because this is where I was able to sort of regroup. And if you're in that place right now where you're just thinking to yourself, I don't even know what my life is about, hopefully this song will help you. And if you know it, you want to stand up and sing or sit down and sing or whatever, go for it.